Hi guys, it's Maddie Hendricks, the classically trained coloratura soprano, and today I would love to talk about the middle voice. If you've checked it out, I hope you enjoyed my video talking about low notes for the high soprano, and it was a very fun video to make because I think that low notes are very important for the high soprano. Today's topic is how I'm working on my middle voice. This was a scary concept for me as a young singer because I used to have this idea of these separate voices. Maybe if you're a young singer, you have this idea of like chest voice and head voice. I know I've got this low voice and I know I've got this high voice. But then how do I blend them? How do I like work through that little crack, that little bump that I've got in my voice? So when I got to training personally, when I started collegiate study, I learned this fancy word passaggio. It's an Italian term, and it means like passage, or this in singing, this transition area between the low and the high voice. And this made sense to me then. And so I started to develop this mix, this middle voice. Now, most of you guys know that you may know that I grew up singing pop music. So the pop mix was different than what I'm going to be discussing today, which is primarily for classical. So this kind of mix is more cricothyroid dominant. What is cricothyroid? The cricothyroid muscles help strengthen our head voice, and they allow the vocal folds to stretch and lengthen, and that's what helps us sing high. And so, but in this middle voice, we do want to kind of keep the vocal folds more in that head voice configuration. So just a little anatomy and physiology for you. And so I first explored classical singing in high school choir, and I was always on the hunt for this very interesting concept. It's the idea of the true head voice, like the true head voice. How do I find that really pure, heady sound? I was a pop singer using head voice every so often, but in choir I used it more, but it felt not too strong. It felt kind of tight, and it sounded a little tight. It sounded a little bit shallow. Maybe I can show this little. There's a little clip of me singing in 2014. This choir solo that I auditioned for. I was practicing it, and you can hear this kind of shallow sound, shallowed out sound. It's kind of thin, and it's just me trying to find my head voice. So it's me trying to work through that little passaggio, that little break, that little bridge. So yeah, take a listen to this. A couple phrases of this solo. So it's a tricky spot in the voice. It's a tricky spot where we're trying to transition registers. So when I got to undergrad, I learned about this passaggio, this transition, and how to kind of work through it. And there were these little shifts in the voice that happened. shifts in registration that I needed to learn how to navigate. My voice teacher described it like shifting gears in a car. So this idea of the break and cracking, another concept I wanted to talk about. I don't love the word break because our voice isn't broken, but I get it, because you're like, it's a flip, it's like a break between registers. I get it, but passaggio sounds better. This passage to me sounds a little nicer. So the other thing that I often think about when I'm singing in my middle voice, when I'm just warming up, and when I was a very young singer working through this, and I say this for my high sopranos and my alto friends and tenor and bass friends as well, if you're in a choir, cracking is okay. So let's talk a little bit about physiology for a second. In our larynx, our voice box, colloquially called, where our vocal folds live, we have different muscle groups that help us sing in different ways. So the thyroid is the body of the vocal fold, and it draws the cartilages together, shortening and thickening the vocal folds, and that's what causes us to sing low in our chest voice. The cricothyroids lengthen the vocal folds, and so we kind of have to find this midpoint in the middle voice where the muscles are working together, and that's, I think, what's tricky, is how do we find them to where they can work together. So I remember, and I know singers that are afraid of cracking, and I always say that's okay. That's okay, because it means the muscles are loose, and we just have to figure out how to help them work together. So you may have heard in the sound that I demonstrated in that clip, there was this idea, I like to call it, I'm trying to figure out how to describe my sound in a way that makes sense, but to me it was this idea that I was like holding on to my thyroid voice just a little bit. So like I'm not kind of letting my voice kind of switch over, versus oh, there's the crack, it's okay. This takes work. It takes work to do this and to discover this, and so it's okay. Now the other thing that I want to say that I discovered when I was in bel canto in Tuscany, I went to a summer program for young opera singers in Italy in summer of 2024. And I learned from one of my teachers about this idea of the laryngeal tilt. And this is when our larynx drops down and forward, and it really helps feel, to me, I felt my larynx stretch. I felt my vocal folds start to kind of stretch, and it was really amazing. So this idea really helped me. So I'm putting my hand on the front of my larynx. So yeah, nice open sound. A neat idea for sure, and you may be able to feel this if you have a more prominent, say, Adam's apple. You may be able to feel this really easily. I can't feel it too much, but I'm working on this, and I'm wondering if it will help me access a more open sound. So here are some images that help me sing easy in my middle voice. So one of the things that I like to think about is keeping the back of my neck. I'm putting my hand on the back of my neck, right about where my hairline is, and kind of pulling up just gently on the back of my neck to kind of keep it long and tall. this helps me really feel an openness, and it helps me stay relaxed and keep my larynx nice and free. Keep the back of the neck muscles, which can sometimes engage when we sing, keep those out of the way. The other thing that I like to think about is the jaw dropping down and back, not coming forward, but staying back. Sometimes when I bring my jaw forward, I get a little bit of a tight sound. So making sure also that the tongue stays behind the front bottom teeth or in the lower gums, right in the gums. But it should not feel tight, like it's pulling back in the mouth, or it should not like tense up. Sometimes it'll like tense up, like up in my mouth, and that's interesting. So I do some tongue stretches, literally sticking my tongue out of my mouth. Make sure that it's nice and nice and free. The other thing that we can do to make sure that the tongue is nice and free is putting my hand underneath my chin. These are our swallowing muscles that help us swallow, the digastric muscles, but sometimes they can engage when we sing, and we don't want that. So releasing those swallowing muscles is really important and helpful for me, and I think a lot of singers, so try that. Staying narrow. So my voice teacher and I talk about this idea of not over opening my mouth in the middle voice, and this idea of la bocca chiusa. It's an Italian phrase, the mouth closed, or the closed mouth. We're going to keep our mouth more closed than it is open. So not closed like internal space. The internal space is nice and open, where the around, like if you know where the back molars are, right by the molars, that's going to be open, but the front of the mouth is going to be closed. So this is why like ooh really helps me. So ooh, 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 that kind of sound. And then ah is a vowel that we want to tend to open wide and go wide. Ah, 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 or ah, really swallowed. But if we can kind of keep it narrow and slender, that's helpful. In my middle voice, that helps me. Another, just an image that I like to think about is that my collarbone, putting my hands on my clavicle, my collarbone, it's getting wider. So this area helps me anchor my larynx, and I like to think about it getting wider. This is just an image, but it does help me kind of stay open. And the passaggio is a tricky spot in the voice. But working through it is so important, and working through the cracks is so important. So a couple of exercises that I love to do include sliding. I love to slide. Slides and sirens are really helpful for me. We can do this on a consonant pair, like ng. If we say the word sing, it's that last sound in the word sing. So sing, so we can use that sound ng to help us keep our resonance and tongue position. And it can also be a really good exercise to slide on. Doing all three of the parts of the voice and letting the voice crack if it needs to. It's gonna just help our muscles to learn to work together. It's hard. I know. It doesn't always sound good. It doesn't always feel or sound pleasant. Sliding from the top down has helped me find that true head voice that I was talking about, that more heady sound that I was talking about without bringing up the weight. So that's more head voicey, wrapped in the head voice. However, we also, I feel like, must not bring down too much head voice. I've heard of this being done for some classical singers back in the day, where there were some really light voices that were coming out. But we want to have I want to have a good connection to my lower register as well as my upper register. So, and that middle voice is just the way to get there, I think. Bringing too much head voice down, what would that sound like? I'm eventually gonna crack because I've worked on letting my muscles switch over, but we want to keep that anchor in the sound, that thyroarytenoid muscles. We want to keep those nice and strong. So, finding that closure in the middle voice. Sometimes when our vocal folds want to come apart, we can get a little bit of a breathy sound, yeah? This is common for young singers. If you're a young singer, don't worry, this will work itself out. But there is some things that we can do. And make sure that's not from the throat. And I talk about that more in my breast support video. Not from the throat, but from the lower abs, like we're laughing. Like that. Good coloratura exercise too. So this was just my experience, but later in my training, I started to bring some belt voice back in to my classical singing to help me make sure that my TA, my thyroarytenoid muscles were staying nice and strong, and that I could keep that anchor in my sound. So instead of but it's kind of light, and we can go into belt so just the idea of keeping that anchor in the sound is really important, and sometimes working on a heavier chest, more chest dominant sounds can help with that. Not for everyone, and you want to be careful that you're doing it in the right way. So, but that has helped me. We don't need to overblow our air, nice balanced airflow, or underuse our air, right? We want to make sure that we're balancing and keeping our ribs open, and using our breath efficiently. As I said, embracing the cracks. It's okay to crack, especially when you're a young singer or just waking up singer in the morning, and doing things 3 to 5 times in a row. Sometimes I'll just stay on that exercise and just play around. Having said that about the cracking, it has been really fun for me to just kind of play around, and one of the things that I learned in Italy was this idea of the yodel, and having some fun with just kind of playing around and yodeling to make sure that my voice was nice and loose. And yodeling, I don't know if this helps everybody, but yodeling, I was having some phlegm and some like I wanted to clear my throat. Yodeling helped knock some of that gunk off. But that was really interesting, and so my voice teacher in Italy would have me go, and yeah, that was fun. So finally, a demonstration. This I thought I would demonstrate one of my favorite arias. It's from an opera called L'Elisir d'Amore by Donizetti, and it's the aria of Adina, Prendi per me sei libero, and it has a couple of difficult, what we call cadenzas in opera, and it's basically where the accompaniment, the orchestra will stop, and the singer has the freedom to kind of move around their voice. And so it's a tricky spot because this cadenza goes throughout several passaggio points in the voice, and it's tricky to find that balance. So let's see how it goes today. So that's a nice feeling low note today. Cool. So, yeah, it's tricky. So if, sometimes this is a really hard, it's such a hard spot in the song. But sometimes I'll do it on a vowel, a solo vowel. So, going through all the cracks first, and again, I try not to worry about it too much, because sometimes they work themselves out the more that I keep singing, the more that I keep using my voice. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the middle voice, and I hope that you have enjoyed, and thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more videos.